I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Hey everybody, I am back from the holidays. I took the train down to Albany, Oregon, which is just 45 minutes out of Eugene. Love the train. It also is so unserious. I feel like when you've been traveling on planes, they're just like, all right, you guys, come on over, we're leaving. And we'll check your tickets when you're on there. It was super fun. I was talking it up. And then on the way back, the train was delayed. I waited for 3 hours in this tiny little station. And then they canceled the train. And they were offering a bus, but I ended up having my parents drive me and then I flew and all of that stuff. So I don't know. I was going to recommend the train to everybody and now I'm not so sure. But I saw some family, saw some friends, my parents and my brother. For those that listen to the episode with my sister, you know that she's in New York, so she didn't fly out. But then I went to Eugene where I grew up and saw all my friends. So that was fun. This week, I was going to skip this week and then I had a wild hair and I thought, I've been thinking about what does 2026 mean for me? Kind of reflecting back in 2025, I'm a big new year, new me kind of person. But I thought, you know what, instead of doing the news, let's take a minute and collectively recalibrate for 2026. And when I was thinking about who to have on, I thought it would make sense to have a kind of coach of sorts. So I have sitting across from me virtually, we have Suzanne Weller, who is an executive coach and leadership facilitator. She's a consultant, a speaker, and a host of her own podcast called The Courage Effect. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, Rachel. Great to be here.
And I will say we do live pretty close to each other, but I opted for virtual because it is easier to do social media clips. And I wanted to kind of be able to promote this episode. And you run it on virtually for yours, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. How long have you been doing yours?
In April, it will be 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. I'm coming up on 2 years in March. What are your thoughts on it? Do you like podcasting?
I love it. It's been one of those things that I always needed in my life and didn't know that I needed. So, and live streaming this past year was a whole other level of it. And yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to continuing my next season in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one. I listened to an old episode from March and it's funny to hear how kind of different. I don't know if you've listened to old episodes of yours, but kind of how different it sounds sometimes. But anyway, a little bit more about you is that you worked before all of this, before the coaching and consulting, you worked in both New York and Seattle in really senior positions at Getty Images. And it looks from your LinkedIn that you sort of went out on your own / did a side hustle around 2018 to do this consulting work that ended up going full time. So I think there's a lot of listeners who are considering making that transition from the corporate world into their consulting, or maybe they've already started this like side hustle. What advice would you give people if they're trying to do something like this? Or what did you wish you knew?
It's a scary endeavor. And it's one of those things where I hired a coach, which was super helpful for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I had worked with a coach previously. When I worked at Getty, I was one of the sales leaders and they got coaches for all of us as leaders in that org. And it was amazing for me. And so when I decided, I was in the same industry for almost 20 years and I felt stagnant. It wasn't that I didn't have a great job and that I wasn't working at a great company. It was just time. And I knew that. So for me, it was like, okay, how do we start to reinvent ourselves? But I think people need to come to terms with, do you want a real reinvention or do you just need a pivot in some way, right? Like, is it a full 180 or is it maybe a 90 or even a 45? So getting an idea of what are the things that are going to fulfill you and bring you joy and getting clarity on that before you make the decision to pull the ripcord or to have an idea of what is truly going to fulfill you. Because I'm sure you know people, Rachel, where they do it and then they're like, oh God, what have I done? Or they've taken a job and they're like, this is not quite what I thought I was getting into.
Yeah.
So any practice you can have that starts to really get some clarity around what do you want? What are the things that aren't working for you anymore? And what are the things that are, I think can be really helpful. And for me, it was taking a sabbatical at that point and really realizing that I need to build up some new skills. I need to figure out what I want to do next. And I'd started to do that when I was still at Getty. But it was really just the reality of I needed to do something different and I needed to figure that out. And having a partner to help me to do that. And also having my husband is also a wonderful partner in my life who was really great to help to pressure test ideas and have an idea of what was scary and what wasn't scary. But people bring their own fears to you when you talk about making your own change. Like one of my colleagues at Getty literally said to me, she was like, well, you're like a woman in your 40s and you're quitting your job. Aren't you terrified?
Oh gosh. So she was terrified if that was her, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but obviously you are by me just even saying this. And then you have other people that are like, oh my God, that's amazing. Take me with you. Like, I want to do that, right? You have people in all different steps. So I think it's just getting clear on what are you afraid of? And is it holding you back, or is it something that maybe you need to address if you're going to stay put? So I think that's the first step.
I wonder too, with consulting specifically, do you feel like you have to have enough clients, enough network built up? For me, that's how I felt, is that I don't think I could have done freelance any sooner, because not necessarily for skill wise, but just network of people and clients that you want to get. So I feel like there might be some people out there thinking, am I ready to switch over to consulting? Is there any kind of litmus test, or was it just kind of a gut feeling of like, yeah, I think I have the network. I think I have the clients that I can get?
I started it as a side hustle. So being able to start building it up and having it, having it on the side was really helpful to have an idea of what I could start to build on. And yes, having that referral network. But the other thing I think that's really important is I also hired another coach and consultant during that period that was more of the business coach. And it truly helped me to understand, where do I need to be spending my time and where am I potentially wasting it? Because there is a certain amount of time, this, owning your own business, there's a certain amount of time that you have to spend, even when business is good, doing biz dev, right? Like business development and marketing is something that is a constant. And it's when we sit back and we think, oh, I'm good, this is going to be here forever. Right. And it's so easy to do that. But there's always a point of, thinking about what is next. What are the things that you don't necessarily see coming around the corner, and consistently building on that. So anything you can do to get more comfortable with that, I think it's reframing what sales and business development is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And how do you make that palatable for you, and what does your business need?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing on leadership coaching. So I don't know, I took classes in college. I feel like I've done a lot of leadership stuff in my life. And when I was working at the Business Journal, my old boss, Emily Parker, she's been on the podcast. She, to her credit, hired a leadership coach for both myself and another one of the VPs. And I took it as a hit. I was like, she thinks I'm a bad leader. She thinks I need help. Like, I'm not good at this. My ego, I don't know. I got insecure for whatever reason. And then very quickly I turned it around and was like, oh no, she's investing in me. So I just wanted to say that in case other people, it was something she came up with. It was adding this leadership coach. She created the budget for it for us. And I think it was super helpful. So if other people are listening, I assume you agree that it's worthwhile investing in.
Completely. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of people think it's like performance coaching, right? Like getting coached out. It's like, no, that's not it. It's your company truly investing in you to grow you.
Absolutely. Well, let's give the audience a little agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So I was thinking we could kind of personally and professionally do a quick little reflect back on 2025. Then we can look towards 2026. Suzanne can help us all come up with some goals or visions or what 2026 looks like. And then we'll spend the rest of the time kind of diving into, you have a new keynote that you're starting out for. Have you done it already? Or are you starting to?
I'm starting to put it out there.
Yeah. So it's a new keynote, and we'll get a sneak peek of it on this show of kind of toxic by accident. And we'll dive into what that means and how we can be better workers and better leaders in our jobs. So Suzanne, like I said, let's start with reflecting back on 2025. I wanted to do just a quick highs and lows. This can be personal or professional, but a little rose and thorn. And my friends hate when I do this, but do you want to go first?
Why don't you kick us off?
Okay. I had a lot of highs. I was reflecting back on this. I've talked about it on the podcast, but producing my 1-year anniversary party and producing the lesbian event was just such a cool experience for me to come up with an idea and then have it come to fruition. Another thing was being a guest on other podcasts. That was something I wanted to do this year. And so I was on KUOW and then the What She's Having podcast. And then the last one I'll say is interviewing my college professor. That felt like a very full circle moment of coming back to my comm degree and just connecting with him and being back on my college campus. So those are my highs. It leans a little professional, but yeah. What about you?
Hey, it all counts.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing also the theme of connection there. Like that was something that was really important for you.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
I would say mine is the same as far as highs. Sadly, it's also the same with lows because I had losses this year, which we'll talk about. But as far as my highs, a lot of it was I got back in touch with people that I hadn't spoken with or had contact with in a number of years, which was really fantastic and really intentional for me. It was also finding new clients, and that wasn't just even as clients, but finding ways to be able to get into organizations or new relationships in organizations that I didn't necessarily expect. And that to me is evolving relationships and evolving my business. And a big part of that too was I was enrolled in the Heroic Public Speaking grad program this year, which is a 6.5-month intense program that I had to go to New Jersey 4 times for, which was amazing. And I met an incredible community of people that I didn't expect. So not only did I learn a lot and have the courage to really up my skill set and go back to school in a way, but I was able to do it with an amazing group of people.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, now I guess I should have done lows first, but now our lows. My low is not having health insurance. I had a meltdown because I didn't know you had to sign up between November and January when you were freelance. I thought that was just when you had a job. So that wasn't great. And then I discovered I think I have sleep apnea. That also wasn't great. And I gained a few pounds, but that's okay because I joined the Olympic gym. Everybody, it's going to be fine. But those are my lows, I guess, for health. My highs are professional. My lows are health. What about you?
My lows are I had losses in my life. So my aunt passed away this fall. A dear friend of mine passed away in the summer after a long 2-year relationship with cancer, which she had a great final round, as I would say, for her. So that loss, and I had a tree fall on our house this year.
Oh my
There was
gosh.
that terrible windstorm in October. Yeah, it was our anniversary, our wedding anniversary, and a tree fell in our house. So
oh no, you're like, what does that mean?
yeah, that kind of, well, it's like what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And we got married in a nor'easter in New York. So it's also sort of weird full circle in that way.
Yeah.
But we got beyond it. But would not advise having a tree coming in through a skylight.
No, we don't like that. I know, new fear unlocked. Okay, so let's look towards 2026. I was gonna have you help us make some goals. I have some ideas, but I'm not set on my 2026 goals. But when we think about goals, a lot of times people say you're supposed to do something. What is it? SMART goals? What is that? Measurable, attainable. What is that? Do you know it?
Specific, measurable. Yes.
Relatable. See, I can't even remember it.
Attainable, relatable. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess what kind of advice do you have for us when we're thinking about our 2026 goals and vision?
So I'm switching up a little bit this year myself. So I do have my goals, but I'm more about intentions. And this is something that I've been doing for the last couple of years, because I think sometimes resolutions and goals can be so hard won, like, that we get really rigid and we force ourselves into situations that aren't healthy for us. So I love the idea of what does success look like, but I think we get so obsessed with attaining them that we lose we lose sight along the way. So intentions have been really important to me on what I really want to work towards. And this year I'm taking it even further into a theme.
Okay.
So I'm having a larger theme, not even a word of the year, because I am a word of the year person, but now I'm going to be doing a theme of the year, because that for me is a larger priority that I have in my life that then I can achieve smaller goals as a part of that.
Okay. So do you have your theme this year? Or are you still thinking on it?
I'm still working on it, but I think my theme is going to be reframe. I think it's going to be, what are the things in my life that I'm not enjoying so much that I need to have a different relationship with.
Well, and last year I read your Substack. Last year, I think your word was curate. Yep. Right? Or maybe that was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. It was curate. And then, last year was reemerge, or this past year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a word, but I do want to move from creating to building, because I feel like I've spent a lot of time creating things, and that's also the more fun thing for me to do. But I want to build. And then my other thing was to stop escaping. Like when I get fight, flight, or freeze, when I get stressed, I just freeze and I kind of numb out and just lay on the couch. So I'm going to I was trying to think of a word that's not lean in, because I don't want to go back to Sheryl Sandberg. But I was like, what is that? Anyway, so that's what I'll be thinking about for 2026. Okay. Let's get into your advice for the workplace. So you'd mentioned that you've worked at Getty Images and you did this consulting for Slalom, and all of that was really based around change management. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast with some other clients. I think people know the broad idea of change management, but what are some specific things, or maybe you have a story from Slalom or something that, if people listening are going into some big changes at their company, what should they be thinking about? What's some advice?
Sure. Let me also say, I went into change management later on. I was a sales leader for most of my career. So it was managing sales teams. And I was involved in some of the largest record-breaking sales in the various companies that I was working for. So Getty Images was one of them. And then before that, it was a company called Corbis. But I was a very goal-driven person. And I was very much about, it was very measurable. And that was something that I didn't necessarily start out doing, but that's what I ended up doing. And I really loved it. And as I went through that process, I realized that we were constantly reorging our teams. It was one of those things where we were always going through changes. And that's when I realized how hard change was because, wait 5 minutes, things are going to change. And it seemed to be almost seasonal, like, okay, it's that time of the year now where we're going to do a reorg. And it got to that point of just realizing I need to be better at doing this, not just as a human being and as an employee, but as a leader, because I saw people on my team really struggling with it. And I really started to see that when I would move account bases around. Like, I had somebody on my team that I would say, okay, you have a lot of accounts. We need to shuffle the deck a little bit. I need, give me some suggestions on who you would like to, maybe move on to somebody else who you'd like to keep. Cause I don't want to do an intervention, but if that's what it's going to take. Yeah. And that's when I realized how much we just get it's great to have good relationships, but they're still like, it's not your account as a salesperson, it's the company's account, and it's a relationship that you're running point on. And through those processes and all these changes, I started to really want to practice change more. And that's when I decided to pivot within, even when I was working at Getty and I started working in change management. And what I really learned is that, we always have this idea of what success looks like and when you're going to hit it. Just because you don't get to that point at the date that you say doesn't mean that you failed. That for me, I think was the biggest thing that I learned is that we go through all of these processes and it's like, okay, everybody's going to be bought in. We were doing a launch of a CRM platform and it was like, we're going to do this launch. Everybody's going to be in, it's all going to be working. Adoption's going to be great. Okay. Yes, but. Sure.
Right.
And the idea of what does that but look like? And it doesn't mean that just because everybody isn't exactly where you want them to be, that success hasn't happened. So for me, it was about not just saying success is from here to here, like maybe it's from here to here, and then continuing to move to that. So being iterative and making sure that we're recognizing what that is such a better way to bring people along than one or done. Because I think that's when we fall into just all or nothing thinking.
Yeah, well, and to remember that we make up these goals, because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't hit my sales goal, or, X amount of people aren't on this new CRM platform, but we made that up. So to your point, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means we need to readjust. At least we're making some progress, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. And it's especially when you have your own business, maybe you can relate to this too, is that, there's certain goals that I have. And if I don't hit it, I'm like, well, maybe I need to, I don't know, maybe I need to change this. And I remember talking to my coach at one point. She's like, Suzanne, you made the goal. You can.
Right. I know. We forget that though. Yeah, I love that. Any other stories or examples for change management, or should we move on?
Well, I think it's, even if you think you're the most adaptable person, you might not be. And when things happen, like we all go there, right? And that's sort of what also my keynote talks about is the idea of we all have these ideas of who we think we are, but then when we're swimming in it, we can become very different people and fall into patterns that we don't necessarily like, that don't work for us and don't work for other people. So even though I thought I was pretty adaptable, there were times, and I was the change management person, but there were times when I wanted to ram something in because it wasn't how I thought it should be. And that is the worst place you can be because it's not helpful. It just takes you further away from your goal.
Change is hard and we're human and we can only handle so much. At my last job, we moved offices. And there was change in my team too. There was all this change at the company. And my boss was like, since we've moved into this building, it was just across the street. And they're like, hey, since we're moved across the street, do you want to move your parking so you can park in this other building? And I said, no. I need one thing to stay the same, and that's where I park my car and the parking guys that work that valet thing, that has to stay the same because I can't handle any other change. So I feel you on that. One other question I had for you was, you have your own clients that you're coaching. Are they like CEO, or like what type of people are you coaching? Are they CEOs? Are they VPs? Are they independent consultants? What are they?
They're usually mid to senior executive leaders within organizations, or they might be people that have their own businesses. So yeah, so it's individual and it's also team coaching.
And team coaching. Okay. Is there like the biggest issue that you're seeing? Is there one thing that people are all dealing with right now? Or what do you feel like is kind of the hot issue?
I actually think that, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing my accidental toxicity keynote, is that so many of the clients that I've been working with is that they are falling into behaviors that are potentially not helpful for them or their teams. And I was coaching a group last year, a small team and of executive leaders, including the CEO. And it was amazing to me how many people that were executives were like, oh God, well, that like our CEO is just toxic. It's all his fault. And the more that I was getting to know them and him, it was like, well, you're all labeling this so much, but you're not really digging into what is toxic? What does it mean? Why do you think this is the case? And that to me is, I think we're all so stressed out. We're doing a lot of stuff. We want to have more sustainable and sane lives. And sometimes it's way too easy for us to just look outside and get so stressed out and blame other people for it. And ultimately, we're all in a system. And I think that's the thing that we need to recognize is we have the power and the ability to make some change ourselves. So that to me is about how do we not just take responsibility, but realize that we have power instead of just, like dancing around it and pretending that it's not there or giving it away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or just complaining about it and not doing anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just, we have all been there, right? Like, oh, that's so toxic. It's like, of course. Is it?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So your new keynote is called Toxic by Accident, How Leaders Stop Poisoning Their Teams. First of all, I love that you say by accident, because I would have just been like, you're giving, I feel like you're being nice to the leaders of like, maybe you didn't mean to do this, which is good, because sometimes maybe they don't. But we don't have time for the whole keynote on this podcast, but I'm hoping you can give us kind of a few tips to help everybody. So how can the listeners identify what you call their own poison riptides? So if somebody's listening and maybe they are toxic and they don't realize it, how can they identify their own poison riptides?
Well, first of all, we all have the ability to be toxic. And that's the thing and I'm included in that. Like, and this is why I'm doing this, is that I realized that behaviors, I had good intentions. They weren't helpful. Maybe I got some results out of it, but longer term, they cause more damage than made sense. So we all have the ability to cause damage. And the ones who occasionally do it, that's a little bit better than the ones who are refusing to see it. So the power is actually it sits in when you become aware of your potential to cause harm, because that's the moment where you gain power to control it. So if you start to look at things, and when I talk about like the poisonous riptides, that whole idea is like one of them is perfectionism.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I have that. Okay. Say more. What do you mean?
I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it is because it doesn't just impact us. Like when we're actually saying this is the standard, this is what it has to be, it has the ability to also do that to other people. So when it's never enough for us, we're potentially wrecking ourselves, and we're modeling that behavior for other people in the organization, showing them that overreaching, overstretching is always acceptable, and we should basically wreck ourselves to get to that point. But at the end of the day, also, how is your need for something to be perfect or just so? How is that impacting other people? How is it showing them that maybe something is good enough? Or maybe you're going into all or nothing thinking when something is like, it can be great. You can be excellent. You don't always have to hustle for approval or other things that are really driving that perfectionism. So I think it's understanding what is good enough, what is excellent, versus what is this idea of perfect, and why is that important?
Yeah, absolutely. So perfectionism is one. How else can people, is it just kind of getting quiet, or is it asking for feedback, or is it getting a coach? How else can they identify some of these?
I think it's the idea of, one of the things that we don't really realize is we think we know what our teams want as leaders, but we don't ask. So it's the idea of, what do you want? What do you need? So I think just having iterative questions of like, what do you need right now? Like one thing you need. Just these questions around that, or, I just hired a new assistant, a new VA recently. And one of the questions I asked is, what's one thing that the people you support do that drives you crazy? Because I want to avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just asking questions is a great way to start, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing that we don't have to know all the answers, that we can always be a work in progress. And just because we're the boss doesn't mean we're going to know everything and do everything perfect.
Very true. Okay, so some bosses, I've had a few, and I've heard stories of a few, where no matter what, whether it's a meeting or you turn something in for them to review, they always have to have an edit. There's always, it's good, but actually change this or do this or whatever. And they can't just say, like, looks good, move forward. Sometimes, of course, it's warranted, but in my mind, I feel like sometimes it comes from their insecurity of, if I don't have an edit, then therefore I'm not valuable. How do you approach a situation like that, whether you are that boss or you're dealing with that boss that just always has something to say, whether it's helpful or not?
I think it's reflection, and I think it's also being able to have that conversation with somebody to be able to open up to that. The idea of, did your contribution really add, or did it take away? Did you potentially silence somebody in the room or make them feel bad, or add something that was just, I mean, to your point, like, were you over flourishing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was it something that was just so overwrought that it wasn't necessarily helpful? But I think that of, what is that truly helpful? And the only way you can do that is after the fact, is to know, like, was this worth it or was it not? Was the juice worth the squeeze? So not always an easy conversation to have with other people, but you can maybe, I think, build into that in different ways. Maybe it's a group reflection.
Yeah, that's true. I dealt with that with events. Sometimes it's not wrong. It's just not what I would do. And I was trying to coach one of my coordinators, and I gave her this event. I was like, this is all you do it. And so she kind of had me review something, and I wanted to make a change. I think I wanted to, like, move the bar to a different place. I'm like, it's not wrong there. It's just not where I would put it. And so I had to really just let it go, because I wanted her to do her thing and, her vision and all of that. So I think some of it's, as a leader, thinking, is this wrong, or is it just my preference, right?
How did you recognize that?
I don't know. I had to just sit with it for a while, because I was going to have to give her feedback. And so I was going to be like, hey, move the bar here. And I was going to have to give a reason. And my reason was because I want to. I was like, well, that's not going to be like a coaching moment for her. So yeah. Okay. One of the takeaways for your attendees after this keynote is to learn to distinguish between healthy striving and toxic hustling. I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this. And a lot of times we kind of pendulum swing and all of that, because we do want to achieve, we do want to be ambitious, but we also don't want to not have a work-life balance and all of that. So can you give an example of the difference? How do we tell the difference, and what are they?
Sure. I mean, healthy striving is when we're finding our own goals, creating goals, or we're working towards something that we are invested in, our why, right? And maybe that's a group why, but it's the idea that you can be excellent without killing yourself, without putting yourself into a danger zone. And when we're hustling is much more about external approval or external, like, we're really focused on what other people are thinking, or we want to make sure that we look good, that we're living up to who we think we are. It's when identity can get more wrapped into it. And that can be a dangerous place to be, because, yeah, if you fail, it's not just about failing, like you've somehow turned into this horrible person in somebody else's eyes. So the more that we are able to, I think, anchor on some of those questions, why does this matter? Mm-hmm. And then going further into, like, what are the things that you want to do about it? What makes sense to do something about it? And do you then choose to do something about it, or do you not? And when we start to take some inventory on, why does this matter? Is this about me, or is this about somebody else? Just like you were talking about in the example, like, well, is this just because I want it, or is this because this is the best answer? But when we take those moments, I think, to step back and to reflect on it, then we have an idea of what's truly motivating us. Like, what is this about? And when I get so wrapped around the axle on something, or when I know that I'm more keyed up, it's like, why is this so important to me? Does it make sense for me to step back right now? That is a conversation that I need to have with myself. And I can do that pretty fast. I think we all can.
Yeah.
Then we can decide what we want to do about it. And that is the magic place. It's between the stimulus and the reaction. It's the choice in the middle. And it's when we recognize that all of this isn't happening to us, we have the ability to step into this and do something. But anchoring on that why, like, I always say the framework for change, my framework for change, what, so what, now what?
Oh, good. Can you walk through, like, an example of that?
I say that in that it really comes from a process of overthinking. Because with overthinking, something happens, we're up at 3 a.m. or there's something that is really important to us in that moment of why do I keep turning this over and over in my head? And then let's use that even for goals for next year. Let's keep it on point with what we're talking about. Why do goals matter? First of all, start with that. What is the goal? Mm-hmm. Then, so what? Why do goals matter? What are they actually going to do for you? Are they something that are valuable? Or are they something that's just going to cause more effort and more stress? And then you get to now what? What do I want to do about it? So that's when you make the decision of, okay, now I've taken inventory. Now I know what matters to me versus not. Mm-hmm. Am I going to set them? How am I going to do that? Or no, I've decided not to, and I can close the book on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
But I think we have to go through that process of prioritizing and really taking that inventory, because we usually go from like what to now what? Like, wait, what about so what? Why does all this matter? And that to me is when you can do that differentiation between healthy striving and hustling, because then it can be like, well, I really want to do this so people think I'm a badass, or I really want to do this so people have their faith in me. I'm like, well, maybe that's not the most important thing right now. Maybe my mental health is. Maybe I need to get another hour of sleep.
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think the reason behind, I see a lot of people that tie their self-worth to their job, and I'm seeing that a lot with people getting laid off and feeling not good about themselves, obviously. But yeah, if their reason for staying up late and working over the weekend is so that other coworkers see them as smart, I think that's a different issue to tackle, right? I think one more question on a scenario, and then we'll close out with my theory question. So I have some friends. I have a friend, and also I've dealt with this too, where they're so miserable at their job and they want to quit. And I've done this too, but there's always a reason to stay. So for me, I had a sales job where I would get my commission. I'd sell an event, but I wouldn't get the commission until the event operated, which was oftentimes 6 months or a year later. So a lot of people that work in sales don't get their commission until later. Some people get their quarterly bonuses. There's always like one more thing to stay for. So I guess, how do you know when it's time to actually quit? Like, how would you help a client that says, like, I just don't want to be here, I got to get out? What would you tell them?
Well, I think that you put that question back to them is like, how will you know? What are the things that you really need to know to be able to make this decision? And a lot of the time I will go through scenario planning with clients of mine that are dealing with this. What are the various options that you have in front of you? And from there, enlist somebody. It can be a coach. Coach is great, but it can also be somebody that knows you well, that is also willing to have a hard conversation with you. Somebody that will challenge you, somebody that's not just there to like make you feel good. Mm-hmm. But you want somebody to pressure test some of your ideas. But it's the idea of, what are the scenarios? Is this valid? Is this real? What are the obstacles? Mm-hmm. What are the chances of this happening? And then starting to plot the course and making a decision from there. And I also love when people are going over various scenarios, the idea of pros, cons, deal breakers.
Pros, cons, and deal breakers. Okay.
Because pros and cons, we all go through that, right? But deal breakers is huge. Like, a lot of the time, if you're looking at various job options, or if you're looking at something that, well, I really want to do this, but this is just not selling me. We know at different points in our lives, and they can change over time, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I really need this now. Like, I really need to work from home. I really need to have flexibility in my schedule. Maybe at other times we don't. Maybe we're willing to travel more. Maybe we don't want to travel anymore. I see a lot of people coming to terms with that. Like, what mattered to me 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago, isn't as important now. And we need to have that conversation with ourselves to understand, maybe I've changed. Maybe I need different things. What am I getting in my job now? How might I have some power to change that a little bit? Or is it unchangeable? Is it untenable at this point? Is it at a point where something is not going to be, changeable enough or flexible enough to give me what I need? And then, do I have the ability to do that? Do I have the stability? Do I have, et cetera, et cetera? But ego always comes into play with this. And I think that's the other thing, that's a question that I always like to ask myself, which is a painful question, is, okay, what is my ego telling me right now? Yeah. And what do I want to believe? And what do I think I need to maybe wake up to? So all of those things can be helpful.
I had a therapist when I was trying to quit my job, and there were two things that I took from it. One was I'd get so angry, and I'm not really an angry person. And she was saying anger can be helpful to fuel action. So I would just write down all the reasons why I was so mad at this job. And she's like, eventually that list is going to propel you to action, whether that's working on your resume or doing whatever, all that kind of stuff. The other thing was the assumptions that I make. So, I think you hear this a lot of like, well, I would get another job, but I won't be able to find something where I can, whatever, work remote. I won't, for me, I won't be able to find another event job that pays this much. Or people are saying like, I should go out on my own. I was like, well, I don't think I have enough. There's no way I can get enough clients. There's these assumptions that we stick to, and then we build everything around that. And so to question that assumption, like maybe you can get another job in XYZ, or people say, I don't have enough experience for this, like, is that true? So those are kind of my 2 takeaways.
I love that. And I would also, this is an interesting idea. What if you wrote down your assumptions now for a year from now, right? Because that's the other thing that I like to say is what would me now tell Suzanne a year ago? What is your future self? What's the advice that they give you? So maybe that's the thing, is like write down some assumptions now. And in a year, like what happened with those assumptions?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. Yeah. Listeners, go ahead and do that. Okay. I wanted to ask a theory question. I think I know your answer, but how much of leadership is natural instinct versus something people can actually learn? Because as I know, you're teaching leadership to a lot of people.
I think it's both. I think that some people have just a propensity for human relationships and, the ability to want to lead. I mean, that's the other thing, is that a lot of people think they have to do it and they don't want to do it. So what is leadership? I mean, to me, leadership is not necessarily a role or a title. It's more of a mindset and your behaviors. So how do you want those to manifest, and how can you actually embody that? I do believe that we have certain talents innately, but there's so many skills that can be built. And so much of the time we'll just chalk up to like, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I'm not saying that because I am a creative person, but a lot of people will say that. Yeah. And it's like, okay, maybe it's not a natural talent, but it doesn't mean that it's not a learned skill. It doesn't mean that it's something that you can't cultivate. And the more that we, I think, start to play around with some of those limiting beliefs or some of those assumptions that we have on ourselves, that's when we can start to have an idea of, well, maybe I don't like it because I haven't tried it, or maybe I don't like it because I had a bad boss, or maybe I think I like it, but I don't like it as much as I think I do. So I think it's a combination of both, but leadership is very much not only a skill, but it's a skill that continually needs to be honed, because we are always changing. We have 5 generations in the workplace right now.
Wow.
Totally different place than, like all of the needs and how different we are across the generations. We need to continually adapt our skill sets to be able to not only work with each other, but to make sure that we're showing up effectively for ourselves as our economies and as all of our industries are also changing pretty dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Suzanne, where can people find you? You have a website. Give the shout out.
Yep. You can find me at wellercollaboration.com. And I am also on Substack. Under Suzanne Weller, Substack is Reimagine Growth. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope everyone feels motivated and excited for 2026. This will come out January 5th. So I wish everyone the best of luck, and we'll come back with our regular show next week. So thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.